methods in Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, and from which the task one is access Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps and create conditional access app control. So we'll get started now. So for that we will go to security.microsoft.com and we will go to close all of these. I'll go to policies under cloud apps, then policy management, then we will click on this create policy button here, then access policy. So we have multiple policies: activity, file, app discovery, access, session, OAuth, from which we will be selecting access policy. And we will give a name to the policy now. And we will leave the category as access control. Under this section here, it says activities matching all of the following. So it's a bit confusing, so I will pause the video and I will figure out what the lab is trying to do. Then I will resume the video and probably explain what I've done. Okay, so the lab was talking about this drop down here which says Intune compliant Microsoft Entra hybrid joined. So we will click on this and we will unselect the Microsoft Entra hybrid joined. So that way we only have Intune in here, and in the second line here we will click on select apps, then we will click on Microsoft Forms, and then we will go down a bit, and in the actions we will be keeping it as test. Under alerts, create an alert is already selected, so that's great. We will also click on send alert as email, and then we will enter our mod administrator email address. Then we will press enter, and that's accepted, and now we will create the policy. So access policy is being created now. Monitor Microsoft Form access. and it's showing 0 active incidents. That means it has just been created and it hasn't logged anything, so that's good to go. And with this, task 1 is now completed. We'll move on to task 2. Task 2 says login as Pradeep to form to trigger activity. Okay, so we will leave this page be and we will log in as Pradeep now. So this is showing the notification again, and I'll just do continue to sign in. Okay, so now we have logged in, and this brings us to the end of task 2. In task 3, we will be reviewing the activity in the Defender for Cloud Apps. So I'll just close this and we'll move on to task 3. So we will go on to the activity log under Cloud Apps. Click on Activity Logs. Then in the filter, we will select Microsoft Forms. From the apps, we will be selecting Microsoft Forms, and it should show up here. So yeah, we can see the activity log for Pradeep G logging in, but I don't think this is up to date because this is from 247 and now we have 359. So I think it has not updated, so I'm just going to hold on here until that has updated. Then I'll probably resume the video again. No need for that, it's already shown up here, so that's great. Yeah, that brings us to the end of task 3, and with this lab came to an end. The next lab we have is lab 19, which is register an application. The exercise is register an application, and task 1 is app registration. I think all of them pretty much the same thing. So we will go back to Microsoft Entra ID for that. Then we will go to app registration under the Entra ID. So we'll click on this. So we will click on new registration, and in the name we will enter demo app. So according to the lab, this is redirect URL is optional. We don't need that, so I'm not going to touch anything. We'll click on register button here, and when that's created, it will take us to the demo app page. With this, the task 1 comes to an end. So registering an app is pretty simple, I would say. The task 2 is, however, configuring platform settings. So under the demo app that we just created, we will go on to manage. Then under manage, we will click on authentication. And we will click on add a platform. So we have a lot of platforms here, and from this we will be selecting web, and the redirect URL is going to be localhost, and we will not touch anything else. We'll just select configure now. Okay, so the setting has been updated, and with this the task 2 comes to an end. The task 3 starts now. In task 3 we will be adding credentials, certificate and client secret. So we will be under the new app that we created. Under manage, we will be clicking on certificate and secrets. We will be clicking on this, the new client secret. Then the name should be something SC-300 lab secret, and it expires within 90 days. We will select add. That has now been added. So we will copy it to the copy clipboard so we can use it later on. And with this, the task 4 comes to an end. Sorry, task 3. Apparently there's no task 4. So we now have task 5, which is adding a scope. So for this, we will be clicking on app registrations. We are already here. So some settings has been changed. I think Microsoft has updated their UI. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to find the setting mentioned here, then I'm going to resume the video. So what it was talking about was under app registration, under Entra, we will click on app registrations and then we will click on all applications. Then we will click on the app that we just created, demo apps. And then under manage section here, we click on expose an API. Then we will click on add a scope. And we have here the app ID URL. URI. And we are going to change this to what the lab has provided for us. So demo apps API is what we are going for. Select save and continue. Okay, there is a note here in the lab which says the app ID URI acts as a prefix for the scope you will reference in the API's code, and it must be globally unique. You can use a default value provided, which is in the form of API application ID, something like that, or specify a more readable URI like something like this. Okay, that's great. So I'm going to cancel this and I'm going to go with what it has provided for us because this is going to be unique, and I will click on this. However, in the situation that we want to change it, you can also change it as well. So we will be making the name as employee dot read dot all. And then we will add a scope. It's asking us to enter admin consent display name. Admins and users. These here admins and users. Here we'll be changing this to read only, access to employee records. And in the description we will be writing allow the application to have read-only access to all employee data. And in in the user consent display name we will write read-only access to your employee records, and the description for the user consent is going to be allow the application to have read-only access to your employees. Then we will keep the state as enabled, then we will add scope, the seventh step is optional but we will still go for it. So this step is to suppress prompting for consent by user of your app to the scope you have defined. You can pre-authorize the client application to access your web API. So we will go on to authorize client. We will click on add a client application. So here we can enter the client ID of an application which we have already previously registered and we want to pre-authorize, and we can just enter the client ID here. I don't have it at the moment, but if you have it you can just enter it, then click authorize scope, then add application, and with this the task 5 is now completed. We'll move on to task 6, which is going to be adding a scope requiring admin consent. So we just created an scope that requires us to read all the permissions, but we will now be adding a scope which will allow us to write all the permissions. So we will click on add a scope, then we will click on employees.write.all, and this is going to be admins only, and the name should be something like write access to employee records. So the description of the admin consent is going to be allow the application to have write access to employee data. We will leave these two fields empty, click on enable, then add a scope. Then once you do that, it's going to be like that. And with this, the task 6 is now completed, and we will move on to we will move on to exercise 2. And exercise 2 is about managing apps registration with custom role, and from which the task 1 is create a new custom role to grant access to manage app registrations. So we will click on roles and admins under Microsoft Entra ID. Then we will click on new custom role at the top here. Then we will give it a descriptive name, something like my custom app role. So on the permissions, so this is going to be it, I believe. We will click on next, and under permissions, okay, so these are the permissions I believe we have to found. So I'll just leave this empty. I'm going to type everything here, then I'm going to delete some stuff. Okay, so we entered the credentials, and this is what came up. So we will click on this Microsoft directory, service principal, manage password, single sign-on credentials. And we will click on this as well. Microsoft directory, service principal, synchronization credentials / manage. Then we'll click on next, then create. So now we created a custom role which only has the permissions we gave it. And with this, lab 19 is now completed, and I'm going to stop the video now, and I'm going to start the lab 20 from the next video onwards.